Good morning. I decided to do my final on something I see every day and I know affects us all, and that is litter and pollution. I focus specifically on the impact of Providence. So these are photos from my neighborhood about 5 minutes from Johnson, Wales. As you can see, there's trash literally everywhere, just big quantities of it. And this is Narragansett Bay, specifically India Point Park, and this is just tons of trash just floating on top of the water. There's a buoy here, propane tank, this is like a close-up picture, and then tire. With all this pollution, you must be thinking, we should have laws against this, and we do. It's the Clean Water Act of 1972. The goal was to make all U.S. waters fishable and swimmable by 1985. River fires and toxic spills caused this law to go into effect because it was just so dangerous. Before this was put in place, only about 1/3 of U.S. waters were safe for swimming and fishing. And what this law does is empower the Environmental Protection Agency with regulating wastewater pollution and giving them the authority and giving regulators the tools they actually need to fulfill through. So who is littering? Let's see. The perpetrators. We have dumping is a problem in both urban and rural areas. It's not just the cities. So there's the casual litterers, which consist of like the daily, everyday things, so styrofoam, coffee cups, cigarette butts, paper, plastics, even hypodermic needles. There's also the large dumpers, I like to call them, and that's the bigger quantities and bigger items, just like how I showed you before with around my neighborhood. And there's the truck drivers, who fail to secure their loads and it just falls off and not picked up and therefore litter. So who's cleaning up this mess? Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut DOTs spend more than $4.3 million cleaning up other people's garbage. I thought this was interesting because in assigned readings we learned a lot about social class and how the middle class is disappearing and the poor are becoming poorer. But yet we have $4.3 million to clean up other people's garbage. That can be totally prevented. Inmates are a big part of the cleanup crew. It says here in this quote that they remove litter every day of the week, and same time, in 3 to 5 times a year they clean the same piece of roadway. There's also sponsor a highway programs and adopt a highway programs, and what those are, the difference between them is the sponsor a highway program focuses on major roadways and they clean the same stretch of highway 4 to 24 times a year depending on the rate of accumulation. The adopt a highway programs focuses on secondary roads, on and off ramps and rest areas, and they get volunteers to help out instead of paying somebody to do it, and they remove it a few times a year instead of as regularly as the sponsor highway. So there's this organization called Save the Bay, and it's for the Narragansett Bay, and it cleans and protects the watershed, and that includes the part of India Point Park that I had pictures of before. Obviously it's to the best of their ability because you could see there's still tons of trash. Water pollution harms the waters, the wildlife, and people who depend on it for their livelihood. Major sources of water pollution are wastewater treatment plants, cesspools and septic systems, and stormwater runoff. Stormwater carries pollution from land into the waters. It also carries pet and animal waste, which is toxic and could cause closures, like for the shellfish bed closures. There's also nutrient overload with waste pollution, and it carries high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus, which are essential for marine life, but too much of it causes the water to cloud, lowers the oxygen levels, and then just kills the animals. And then also there's toxic pollution for now over 200 years, so it's hard to bounce back from all of the pollution that there was. So for my project part, I decided to do my own shoreline cleanup, and I went to India Point Park as I pictured before, and although it was high tide that day, I still decided to pick up at least a dry spot. So this is before. It was like a huge piece of styrofoam, plastic everywhere. This is the after. I got that piece relatively clean, pretty happy about it. I put the plastics in 2 different bags. I had trash in one bag, which mostly consisted of like cigarette butts, styrofoams, and really just randomness. And then the other bag, I did mostly just things you could recycle, so lots of plastic bottles, and we found like a cigarette tube and stuff like that. So the theoretical perspectives, this littering explains our symbolic interaction, which is a micro-level perspective that examines individuals' everyday behavior through the communication of knowledge, ideas, belief, and attitudes. Our actions are based on social interaction, which is a process in which people take each other into account for their behavior. And this is proven in this. It's RIDOT, emphasizes cleaning messy stretches of roadway quickly to prevent copycats. And then, quote, when the roads look cleaner, people are less likely to contribute to the trash than if it's dirty, which is totally symbolic interaction. There's also functionalism, which maintains that a society is a complex system of interdependent parts that work together to ensure a society's survival. Pollution and littering is a dysfunction of our society. It doesn't benefit our society at all. If people don't understand the basic principle that throwing away garbage on the ground is wrong, they're beyond reach. People know they shouldn't, but do it anyway. It's selfishness. You decide you're going to let somebody else pick it up after you, and it's totally right. We need to work together in order for this not to happen. So changing and going forward, what needs to change? There needs to be more effort in prevention. We need to have more education on recycling and why we're doing it, and actually instilling the penalties for doing such an act as littering. Like, these are signs around Rhode Island, $85 to $1,000 fine for littering, and nobody ever gets those. And creating more products that are biodegradable, because if people were to litter, it would dissolve instead of just staying there forever. What are the barriers to changing this problem? People just don't care enough, and they're not educated as to why it's benefiting us, and they don't really care. It's sad. Governments have their hand in companies against pollution, and then they also have their hand in companies that are for it. So it kind of goes against each other, and nothing's changing. And from here on out, what I'm going to teach what this experience taught me was, I wish everyone cared about the environment as passionately as I do. Taking the extra time to hold your plastic bottle and recycling it at home, or taking your wrapper and putting it in your pocket, is just the little steps that are just too complicated and difficult for people nowadays, but it's not really that hard. How will these concepts you learned in the class inform your actions moving forward? People copycat through symbolic interaction, so as long as I contribute and keep doing my part, hopefully it'll rub off on others and people will stop littering eventually. This is a really powerful image. It's when you throw it away, think, there is no way. And this is my works cited. Thank you. Okay, stop.